So I was gonna have a video like somewhere around this point where I was like, what you saw from up here is a time lapse of me taking this apart. But my GoPro ended up dying and I didn't hear it do it. But either way, took a bunch of stuff off, you know, both valve covers, stuff up here, took the oil pan off, spilled a bunch of oil and stuff, but we're gonna clean that up. You don't have to take the oil pan off to do the oil pump gears. The reason that I did is because I'm replacing it anyways for the swap. So right now what I'm held up by is I don't have a puller for this. I'll go ahead and get one from a buddy of mine or something, or rent one because I think you can. And then we'll be ready to take the timing cover. Once we're kind of in here is when I'll actually start showing a little bit more, I think. Or once I get used to just filming stuff on camera, because it's been a while. So cut me a break, or don't. But regardless, this is how she sits. I'm out of time today, so I'm gonna put some plastic over it and around it. That way less dust gets in here, I guess, and go from there. The 2018 Harmonic balancer is a different size and diameter than like a 2020 and all the other years pretty much. For the Gen 3 Coyotes. The part number that everyone says to use is this OEM Tools 25264, and it doesn't work. The inner diameter here is just too small for it to fit in. Some people were grinding down the tool to get it to fit. I just don't feel like doing that. You can go get this part number from AutoZone, and it is this big puller set. You use these in order to go onto the outside of the accessory there. It will go onto that lip. I used a thrust bearing. I'll get the part number and show it once I actually have this off. I have that inside of here, using a deep socket in order to have a place to press on. And now I can turn this by hand here, and I'm not having this rub against my crank and wear down metal there. And it's pulling off without really causing any issues. So if you have a 2018 Coyote and you're doing oil pump gears, this is super important to know. As you can see, it got it off just fine. This is the part number right here that you're gonna wanna buy for the thrust bearing, or at least this is the one that I got. It actually came with like an LS pulley installer, but it just lets you do what you got to do for that. So you can actually go on Amazon and buy just this thrust bearing or thrust washer, whatever. You don't need to buy that whole tool in order to do it. The next thing that I'm going to need to do is take off the timing cover, but that's, you know, pretty self-explanatory for most people. I think it's just going to be taking out all these bolts here, and then this whole cover should come off. Now that we got the timing cover off, you want to have this keyway at about 12 o'clock, and then the R for right side, because this is the passenger side or the right side of the motor, should be pointed about at 12 o'clock. It's probably not going to be perfect, but you know, something kind of like that. And then to confirm that you're in the right spot, you want to come over to the cam lobes and make sure that they aren't compressing down on anything, on any of the valve springs. So just go check that visually. Some of them will be close, but they shouldn't actually be pressing down on it. That you're going to need is to compress down these guys, and then I just use an Allen wrench, as have other people, just to hold down the tension up here. right? It's oil driven, but it constantly wants to spring out. So, yeah. Another thing that I'm doing just for my own sake, because I'm kind of in a very limited spot here and have pretty bad organization right now, is I'm just threading the screws that I use or take out, just kind of back in gently, very gently, to where they were. That way I don't lose anything. Alright, the next thing you're going to do is turn this to about 5 o'clock. To my understanding, when you do it, it should kind of walk itself into the correct spot, and then I believe this will be pointed kind of that way somewhere. So let's see how this looks, see if we can get it with one hand. A little bit. There you go. This guy's turned kind of down, and then we're right around 5 o'clock. So now we should be good to remove this tensioner and then start taking this side off. And I'm just gonna double check the cams like we did over on this side, just to make sure that we're kind of in the right spot. Do I look stressed? I am stressed. I'm just curious if I'm looking. This piece right here should kind of just slide off if she wants to. Maybe not, maybe. Kind of coming. Now that this is off, the first thing that I'm going to do is line it up with the new one and make sure that my marks are the same. The keyhole and the timing mark should be the same offset on the new one that you get. So just double check that before you go any further. Should be pretty simple to check out. I just kind of lay it over it, and it is. So we should be good. Just like that, we're off. And I'm just going to put my bolts back in the holes that they came out of, like I have them. Next thing we got to do is take all these bolts out. Now, before I go any further, I just want to match them up. So before I go ahead and put this all back together, we're going to take some assembly lube and just lubricate this here where this rides on, and really more so just this whole thing. And I'll do the same thing to the other side of this property. We have to torque this down. These bolts get torqued down to 89 inch-pounds. I got a digital torque wrench. I'm just going to do it in my own crisscross pattern. I don't think there's a specific way, but don't quote me on this. So just going to carefully do this. Kind of do it in phases. So now I just have to put it back over the crank, get this lined up where she should be. Should just slip right now. So the next step, now that we have this in place, is to get the timing assembly back on, and I will double check the procedure for that and we'll continue. So once you get this timing mark lined up, you also want to make sure that you have this side lined up. You can tell that you're on the right one. You see that little divot there on the tooth? That should be in line with this. Then you put your guides on, tighten this one down first, then I threw this one in place. Once this is in place, you put these 2 bolts in and then pull your pin, and that should take out all the slack that you have on your timing chain. So there shouldn't be any real play with it up and down now that you have tension on it. And then we work towards timing this for the other side. I'm gonna try to record with one hand while I do this so it makes the most sense. Doing it with something that doesn't ratchet seems like the way to go. So let's try it. All right, so now right about here, we've gone 1 full revolution, and then reset this. Sorry for it being shaky, I just want to show this the easiest way possible. And then we want to get you to right about 12 o'clock with the keyway, which looks something like that. So hopefully I did that right. Now we should be ready to line up the right side or the passenger side of it. The reason you do this is you want it to be at, I believe this side to be at top dead center when you're putting this timing chain on. Or maybe it's the other way around. You want this set up for this to be at top dead center. Regardless, this is how you're supposed to do it, to the best of my knowledge. Now that I got this lined up here, and this is lined up here on the right side with your divot, right? I went ahead and I put this one on first, this timing chain guide here first, and then I slipped this one on. This was kind of hard to get on for me. Might not be for you, I'm not really sure, but once I got these both in place, I double checked that my dots and everything were lined up with my markers, put this in, and then now I'm ready to pull it. And then this should be good. I cleaned the mating surfaces here. The next step is going to be putting the timing cover on. So you have a few spots that you need to add some RTV. I'm just using the Permatex black sealant adhesive. You want it to be here and here on each side, and this is where the heads bolt up to the block. So you want it for that seam here. You want it at the top where the valve covers go across and attach on both sides. And then you're going to want it at the bottom of the block here where your oil pan snugs up to. So just going to put some on both sides for each of those spots, and then yeah. Okay, now that I have my little bit of RTV in place where I need it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think that's everywhere that I need it. So we can throw the timing cover back on. You don't really need a ton of this stuff. It will spread out where you want it, or at least it should, once you snug down the timing cover. So I got all the bolts torqued down on the timing cover. We have to wait for this to dry, all these little spots to actually dry before we can, trim them off and then put the valve covers on. So I took that time to reinstall my water pump, put this pulley back on, and then I could put this on if I had the tool, but I don't, so gotta wait for that. Just kind of waiting, and then we can put the valve covers back on and put the oil pan on and all that other jazz. I don't have a good tensioner here because it broke, as did the old timing cover, and I'm not going to be doing everything on it until it's really in the car, but this is a good point to actually leave it and get it sealed back up. Now this is all cured, so I can trim this stuff flat and then get to putting my valve covers back on. So I'll just be doing that, and then we'll work on the bottom end too. We got the valve covers on both sides, torqued down and everything. I just kind of did it by hand tight. Didn't do it by the spec, but she'll be good. So I think we're gonna flip her over. And start working on putting the oil pan on. I think that's the best next step.